Hey, welcome, folks, to the January 10th, 2025 Happy New Year and legislative preview episode of On Iowa Politics. This week on the show, we're going to preview the legislative session and also talk about Rita Hart being reelected as Iowa Democrat state leader and an Iowa man joining a lawsuit against the federal government for $50 billion. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. With me this week is Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief Tom Barton. Hello, Tom.
Didn't you do that gag last time?
I think I did, yeah. I mean, if you keep playing the hits, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Lead Des Moines Bureau Chief Maya Marchel Hoff is with us too. Hello, Maya.
Hello.
We have Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal here. Hello, Jared.
Erin, can we really still say Happy New Year 9 days in? Are we done with that?
I mean, that's fair. It's just it's our first time on the air in the new year. Yeah. That's a fair point, though.
I'll give it to you.
We'll look over the bylaws and see if we ran afoul of parliamentary procedure there.
According to Larry David, you get 3 days after New Year's. That's it.
Is that right? Nice. Is that a Curb episode?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. And finally, Gazette columnist Todd Dorman's with us. Hello, Todd.
Hello, Erin. I was briefly muted. I'm sure the listeners would enjoy that to continue, but I found the button.
You dangled the dream and took it away.
I did.
All right. Let's not bury the lead here. Let's get right to that $50 billion lawsuit. It involves the violent demonstration at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Some of the individuals who pleaded guilty for various minor crimes that day. And the reason we're talking about it, a Sioux City man. Jared, I'm going to let you take the setup here. You take it from here. Tell us about it.
Yep. So this is a story from the Journal's Nick Hittrick. A Sioux City man who served prison time for entering the Capitol during the January 6th riot in D.C. is joining hundreds of others in a planned class action lawsuit seeking $50 billion with a B in damages from the federal government. The Sioux City man, Ken Rader, and others are part of what's called the, let me get this right, January 6th restitution and wrongful incarceration lawsuit. And they say that they were targeted by the justice system and wrongfully incarcerated. Rader himself pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. And he got sentenced back in 2022 to 90 days in prison plus 3 years probation. And then he had to pay $500 in restitution. Of course, that was on the smaller end of things. Some of the other people that are involved in the lawsuit, one of the lead people, Jake Lang, has been accused of beating police officers outside the Capitol and has been in jail for nearly 4 years. Of course, other people, not necessarily the ones that are part of the lawsuit, racked up some big sentences, 22 years, 18 years. 15 years was one for pepper spraying a cop that somebody got. So those are all over the place. Rader, when he was talking to Nick, said, I want a pardon and I want to be compensated. I went to Leavenworth for picking up class. And he said it was all a setup, which is one of a number of defenses that have kind of arisen from the more fervent Trump supporters post-January 6th. You've also heard people say that it was totally peaceful, which Trump is fond of saying, or that it's actually Nancy Pelosi's fault. So it's been kind of a moving target on what actually happened among some of those folks. Not entirely clear where the $50 billion would come from if the lawsuit were successful, but
who and forgive me if you said who are the defendants, Jared?
One of the agencies, there are agencies targeted, including like the FBI and the Justice Department, that kind of thing. So yeah.
And did you and forgive me if you said, did Rader serve his 90 days?
Yes, he did. He did.
Okay. Yeah. So that's obviously and I didn't realize, that's interesting that you've kind of got a mix. I guess when I was reading that, I made the assumption that it was mostly, if not entirely, people who were convicted of the lesser crimes. But you said there's a mix in there. There's some of the more serious ones in there as well of people who've joined us.
The guy that I named, Jake Lang, he's leading the class action lawsuit, and he's actually been in jail awaiting charges for 4 years at this point. And like I said, he was one of the ones that was accused of beating police officers on January 6th.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we'll have to see how that turns out. The legal channels move pretty slowly. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I'm sure Nick and the Journal will monitor that to see for that local impact, and we'll talk about it in future episodes. All right, moving on. Despite Iowa Democrats taking another election cycle on the chin, the state party's leadership committee this past weekend reelected Rita Hart for a second 2-year term as state party chairwoman. A couple of other candidates also ran for the position, but neither mounted a serious threat to Hart's reelection. Meyer, you covered the meeting and Hart's reelection for us. What did Rita have to say? Tell us more.
Yeah, going into the meeting, we kind of knew what to expect, that Hart would gain the chair again. I wasn't there 2 years ago, but from what I heard, it took 11 hours, I think, to elect someone
Too
to the
many.
chair.
I don't know what the number was, but it was way too many.
Yeah, so that was a possibility, but it was pretty quick, pretty swift. Hart got 38 out of 49 votes, and there was kind of not a lot of clamor after that. A couple people ran against her. There was Alexandra Nicholas Dermody from Davenport, Tim Winter, a former chair of the Boone County Democrats, Kim Callahan, chair of the Iowa's Democratic Party's 3rd Congressional District Committee. Winter got the most with 10 votes, but other than that, it was just a pretty smooth process. Like you said, Democrats did kind of take a beating in Iowa, not just from a presidential standpoint, but in the state house as well. And so a lot of the concerns were around the party's viability in that election and moving forward. But Hart's response to that was that she, in her 2 years, was kind of able to stabilize the party's finances a little bit more, and kind of help it out of the slough that she said it was in. So
yeah, and I mean that was interesting. I think for people who may have watched this unfold from a detached perspective, you wonder how a state party chair gets reelected after such a rough election cycle. But obviously, not many of them have been great for Iowa Democrats in the last few cycles anyway. So it seems like maybe the leadership committee is taking the long view with this one here. And it sounds like Hart was kind of talking to that about trying to build something, right? Is that what you said there?
yeah, definitely being able to rebuild. And she said, she was able to rebuild a lot over the past 2 years. When she came in, there were, I think, 2.5 working staff members. But yeah, so her term this year will be a little different. It'll be 4 years instead of 2 because Iowa Democrats changed that last year, and they just changed chair terms to 4 years. So she'll be serving 4 years now instead of 2.
Thank you for catching that. Good live fact checking here of the host. Good job.
Did she kind of highlight any things that they're going to maybe try to do differently, like in the coming cycles?
A lot of it was just she talked a lot about having family meetings, regrouping a lot. It was kind of similar to responses that are just coming from Democrats right now that are kind of going out in the woods and doing a little bit of soul searching to figure out what really happened in the election, how to kind of turn things around for them. Tom, I think you could speak better to this, but she talked a little bit about the 2028 caucuses and what could lie there in terms of maybe wanting the Democrats to come back or not. But I don't think she was super aggressive on that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, according to her 18-page action plan that she sent out to members of the party's governing body, state central committee members, ahead of their meeting, ahead of their leadership elections, she talked about how Iowa Democrats aren't on the same page about what should happen with the Iowa caucuses, and talks about holding these family conversations with Iowa Democrats to kind of figure out a strategy and unified approach for how to approach the 2028 presidential nominating process and figure out what the future is going to be for the Iowa caucuses. She did mention in her letter that the upcoming election of a new DNC chairman or chairperson provides an opportunity to kind of mend fences with national Democrats who have soured on the state. And her focus wasn't so much on the Iowa caucuses and 2028 as it is on the 2026 election cycle coming up. And having conversations with national Democrats, national committees and campaigns about investing in Iowa and making the case that, Iowa still presents an opportunity for Democrats to pick up congressional seats, still making the case that Iowa is still competitive, says that there will be a competitive U.S. Senate race coming up in 2026. There will be at least 2 competitive congressional district seats. And so really kind of making that case again to national Democrats of an early investment in Iowa and trying to get more support for the party to kind of build its organizing capacity.
That's the challenge that lies ahead in that document that you refer to, Todd. I'm curious that divide within the party, and we hear from that too when we go out and talk to Iowa Democrats. There's some who lament the loss of the caucuses. There's some who think it's a good thing. And the problem is now that's like it's almost a side argument where the party has a lot of work to do on the electoral side of things. What would Todd Dorman Consulting tell Iowa Democrats to do moving forward here?
Well, they probably needed new leadership. To be fair, there weren't a lot of people who stepped forward to try to provide that leadership. I mean, it's kind of like some of the stuff she said is kind of like a football coach saying, well, yeah, we got destroyed on national TV in the biggest game of the year, but hey, I hired some coaches. We've got, we've got some new footballs that we're trying. Everybody's got a shiny new helmet. So, I mean, it's just, I didn't get a sense from her tenure that, or her first term that she was, contrast her with Jeff Kaufman. And I wouldn't tell Rita Hart to act like Jeff Kaufman because Jeff needs to calm down. But, they seem to have an enthusiasm, and winning helps you do that. And the Democrats didn't win basically anything. At least all of their objectives anyway were dashed. So I don't know. They don't really have much time to go into the woods because, they should be preparing to do a better job telling Iowans what's going on in the legislature and trying to hammer that home, because I think voters have made a disconnect between the candidates and the policies, and maybe Democrats could try to do more to hook Republicans to policies that people don't like. It's not much of a plan, but I really don't know. I think the 26th gubernatorial race is sort of the when we find out whether we're going to have a viable Democratic Party in the state or whether we're going to become, Oklahoma or somewhere that has Democratic staff, but very few voters.
Yeah, I agree with that at the end there. In fact, I was just saying that I was talking to a State House core colleague from another outlet and said exactly like that. Like that gubernatorial election is now like the thing that tells us what we're going to know more so than the state party chair race. Like being competitive in that thing is is everything right now for Iowa Democrats. I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it would be nice if they actually had a primary that would get, bring some attention to their candidates, but I mean,
have they learned that lesson yet?
Yeah, I don't think that. I fear that that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the DCCC can't get involved in this one, right? So there's that much. All right, let's get on to the main event now. Our preview of the 2025 session of the Iowa legislature, which begins on Monday, right around the corner. 150 state legislators will be back in Des Moines. Well, technically, I guess 149 because there's one vacant Senate seat now that former Senator Chris Cournoyer has been chosen to serve as lieutenant governor. Anyway, the work begins Monday on the latest round of state lawmaking. And for the 8th consecutive year, that state lawmaking process is under complete Republican control. In fact, Republicans grew their majorities in both chambers of the Iowa legislature. And so they have just massive historic numbers and wiggle room to play with on bills that they pass. So let's just do one of our traditional whip around the horn sessions here and have everyone pick one topic that they'll be watching for during the upcoming legislative session. And then if we need to fill any blanks in at the end, we can. But start with the one that you're really interested in. And Todd, we'll let you kick things off. What are you looking for in the next couple of months under the golden dome of wisdom?
Oh, I think we'll all be surprised, and there will be bipartisan cooperation, and it's really going to be something. Everything will change. No, they've got a huge majority. They're going to do basically whatever they want. Democrats are sort of window dressing, watching the stuff occur. All they can do is make it last longer when they debate. So they're gonna. I got a mailing yesterday from, and I don't have it with me. Nearby, I don't remember what group it was, but it was like one of those groups that has like a made up name. Hitting Jennifer Conforst on education and sort of building up the governor's resume, which I don't know if that means she's going to have another K through 12 surprise in her condition speech this year. I sort of figured that they'd shift most of their attention to the universities and kind of Floridalize. Is that a word?
Not one that I would use.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't either. The upper, the higher education, because they want to tinker with the curriculum and tenure and all those things to try to chase the libs from campus and establish a more patriotic set of universities. I mean, that and property taxes. Of course, whatever they do on property taxes, it seems like they're intent on sort of capping how much money local governments can raise, not only just the property tax rate, but also looking at the assessed values. They would just basically say you can't raise more than 2% of revenue. And that's not going to be good for local governments. I think of Cedar Rapids, where they're using property taxes to pay for the flood protection system, and I'm not sure how that's all going to be affected by this if they go ahead and put those clamps on. Maybe some glyphosate liability protection. That's always.
Yeah, that one could be back. All right, Tom. Todd already violated my one topic rule. Let's see if you behave any better.
Yeah. So one topic I'm going to be paying close attention to, especially in the beginning of the session, is going to be a proposal for a casino moratorium. So we have heard that some lawmakers plan to introduce a bill the first week of session implementing a casino moratorium. Iowa's Racing and Gaming Commission is set to decide on Lynn County's gaming license application at their February 6th meeting. So lawmakers have a really limited window to pass some sort of legislation before the IRGC decides on the Cedar Rapids casino license. I'm working on a story right now. Check out tomorrow's Gazette, and later online today, the Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission just recently in the last day or two put out studies that it commissioned looking at the impact of a Cedar Rapids casino on Iowa's gaming industry and the impacts it would have on existing casinos in the state. There weren't a lot of surprises in the studies, but I've got a feeling that lawmakers will use those findings as kind of ammunition for passing new legislation or passing a new moratorium. The studies say that Iowa's gambling market is essentially saturated. It's a mature market. You've got 19 commercial casinos and 4 tribal casinos in the state, and say that there's limited growth potential or opportunity for adding another casino, and that putting in a Cedar Rapids casino, while it would generate new revenue to the state, it would largely come at the expense of existing Iowa casinos, pulling customers and revenues away from Riverside and Waterloo and these other communities that have casino operations. But anyway, that's going to be interesting to watch, to see how quickly lawmakers are able to get something passed on that. We saw a bill that would have implemented a new casino moratorium introduced in the dwindling hours of the session this year. It passed the House in the early morning hours, only to get held up in the Senate, just because it was a marathon last day of session, and it was 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that, and lawmakers just wanted to go home, and so the Senate didn't even take it up. So we'll see where that might go in the Senate this coming session.
Yeah, that's a good one. And like you said, that we're going to find out much sooner than later this time around what that's going to look like, because of those deadlines they're facing. We're hearing there's going to be action. In fact, I just heard today, and when I say today, I'm talking Thursday, that there may even be an early subcommittee meeting on that the literal first week of session, which is pretty unusual. So we'll see if that turns out to be the case. All right, Jared, I understand you talked to a couple of the lawmakers up in your neck of the woods. What are they / you watching for in the session?
14 of them, Erin. I heard back from 14
More than
of
a couple.
of our Northwest Iowa legislators. I asked them for their top 2 priorities for 2025. And much like Todd and Tom, some of them did not listen to my instructions and gave me more than 2 things, which I appreciated. The most common responses I got were property taxes, which has been touched on already. Flood relief, of course, in response to the historic flooding this past summer in our part of the state. Also, kind of related to our part of the state, the use of eminent domain for the building of a carbon capture pipeline, as I keep saying, not going away. But with that one, actually, I did want to stop for a second. Have any of you all heard any legislators bringing that up? I'm wondering if this is just starting to be a Northwest Iowa thing at this point.
Not yet. I mean, and we asked leaders about it, and kind of get the same answers that we've been getting. Nothing that would illuminate whether it's going to go any differently this year than it has in past sessions. And the most recent thing there is that the House did pass a bill last year. The Senate didn't take it up. Now there's different makeup in Senate Republican caucus now at the committee level. where that bill would go. So it's going to be interesting. But I haven't heard anything specifically. Tom or Maya, have you?
Yeah, right now, I don't know that it's going to go any different than what we saw this session. It's still a priority for House Republicans. I don't know that much has changed among Senate Republicans, but just again, in conversations that I've had with House Republicans, they do still plan on putting forward legislation, putting forward proposals. Again, we'll see where that goes in the Senate. I know that at least House Republicans plan on putting forward legislation related to land surveyors and the ability of surveyors to come on to your land, getting permission to survey it and to do minor digging, for these pipelines. We may see something at least along those lines. Amy Sinclair, the Senate president, Republican from Allerton, said that senators might talk about the usage of eminent domain more broadly and making sure that the Iowa legislature and lawmakers are defending property rights, but it's not going to be directed specifically at a pipeline. So we may see some conversations in the Senate related more broadly to how eminent domain is used.
So stuff that's kind of more like around the edges, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing specifically that I think would directly impact these pipeline projects in Iowa.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one that came up with multiple people, including some of the Senate Republicans from our area that I talked to. And then it was a grab bag of other kind of kitchen table stuff like affordable housing, as well as, sort of culture war stuff like Skylar Wheeler, representative from Hull, said he wants to focus on removing gender identity from the Civil Rights Code. Representative Steve Holt said he wants to, quote, protect children and the right of conscience for adults from radical transgender ideology. And then one of the ones that's more of a libertarian kind of interest, Senator Kevin Allons from Salix, said that he wants to introduce a transactional gold currency that provides a way for all Iowa citizens to, quote, avoid the relentless inflation caused by the U.S. Federal Reserve and resist federal tyranny.
I could do another Austin Powers impersonation there. Do the I like gold.
Yes,
from Goldmember. But Tom has destroyed my ego, so I'm my confidence, so I'm not doing it.
I'm starting to wonder, Erin, if the Austin Powers movies are the only movies that you've seen.
That's fair. They are not, I assure you, but that's fair.
Okay.
I get other references too, I promise. I got the Curb Your Enthusiasm reference, right?
Yeah, I guess I'll throw another question your guys' way. What, like, on the culture kind of stuff seems like it might be brewing for the biggest in 2025?
That's a good question. I've had that thought. I'm not surprised to hear the gender ID and transgender stuff. I would have expected that kind of stuff to be back. I think depending on how you classify at the DEI stuff is still going on, and that ties in with the higher education committee that Todd referred to. Those would be the ones that come first to my mind.
I mean, the idea of taking gender identity out of the Civil Rights Code isn't new. It's been bills have been filed every year for a long time, and legislators haven't been willing, at least the leadership hasn't been willing to go that far. It would be the first time in history that a right was taken away from Iowa. And this is in the past, this has been the line in the sand that the business community in Iowa has sort of drawn, saying, you're going to make us into a pariah state if you do something like this. So please, you can do your sports ban and you can do all these other things, but don't drop the big one. So we'll see. I don't know if those business interests have a lot of pull left. I mean, but they, leadership may feel like just avoiding that whole mess. But yeah, maybe they'll do it.
But it would build upon what lawmakers have recently done, at least as it pertains to restrictions on teaching about gender identity in elementary schools. They passed that bill. Ooh, has it been 2 years now? Last year?
Was it
2 years ago.
2023, right?
2 years ago, it was 2020, yeah. That restricted teaching about sexual orientation and gender identity through grade 6, right? But
Yeah,
but
kids.
then maybe that's, to your point, Todd, maybe that's an indication that at least among leadership, that's the line they're drawing, and they don't want to take it further than that. At one point, there was a proposal that would have prohibited teaching about gender identity in all grades. But again, maybe that's an indication, at least among leadership, felt that was kind of a bridge too far, and didn't want to take it, that far.
Yeah, I mean, if you pull gender identity out, that means that you can deny employment to a transgender person. You can deny access to public. What's the word I'm looking for? Public
Accommodations.
Yeah, so they basically go from having civil rights protections to not having civil rights protections, and I mean they're a very, very, very small portion of Iowa's population, but I think there will be a lot of stories if that happens about people being mistreated, and yeah. So I mean, that would be a big deal.
Well, and that conversation will make for some fascinating moments in the Iowa House, where we now have our first ever transgender state lawmaker coming in, was elected in November, and will be coming in, Amy Wichtendahl from, forgive me, it's the Cedar Rapids area.
Hiawatha.
Hiawatha, thank you.
Former Hiawatha city council member who was
Yep.
elected to the House.
Yep. So that could make for some. All right, Jared, did we make it through your list before I move on?
Yes, we are. We're all good.
All right, thanks for those. Maya, for your first ever session covering the Iowa legislature, what are you watching for? And did we leave any crumbs left over for you here after everybody else is gone?
Well, there's still a lot of crumbs left probably, but I'm going to stick to your rule, Erin, and just do one single issue.
I love it.
Not just because I haven't been in the state very long, but yeah. I mean, looking at all the things from all the legislative previews and learning what I have learned in my few weeks here, for some reason, I'm really interested in cell phone bans in schools. It seems to be one of those issues that, one, gets a lot of attention and also kind of has bipartisan support, which isn't super common for those subjects that people pay a lot of attention to. It seems like they usually are very divisive topics. So, but yeah, I think it's super interesting. The governor, Kim Reynolds, has said she's had an appetite for it. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle seem to be at least open to taking it up or taking a look at it. And depending on if it comes up or how far it goes, it'll be really interesting to see how schools respond, how they implement it, and if any kind of interest groups would come out of the woodwork for that. But yeah, I come from a family of educators, and my friend is a first-year teacher, and she's already seen kind of the impact that cell phones have on her students. She teaches 5th grade, and I mean, it's, a lot of people cite these cell phone bans as good things because it helps students stay more focused. It helps them retain information better. It just helps them learn better, and it'll just be really interesting to see how that plays out. I know a lot of other states have already adopted legislation like that. So,
Yeah, that's a really good one, Maya. And your anecdote there is perfect, because for any of us, you talk to someone who you know in education, and almost universally, that's the response you get, right? It's like, my God, yes, it's just destroying, the classroom. It's destroying their attention spans. It's destroying their social interactions. So yeah, I think you're right. And early on, what we've heard is largely bipartisan support for the proposal. And to be fair, what we're hearing being proposed is not necessarily a blanket cell phone ban so much as a requiring schools to have a policy, kind of setting a baseline that they have to have and that's obviously much more palatable, a state law, if that is what it turns out to be. By the way, that's not officially what it is. That's just what we're hearing. That's obviously much more palatable to say, hey, schools, you need to have a policy in place, versus the state coming in and saying, hey, schools, you have to ban them no matter what, because we said so. That makes it more likely to be bipartisan too. So yeah,
Right.
that'll be an interesting debate.
Yeah, definitely. Blanket laws like that almost always aren't super effective. So, right, like you said, to have kind of more of a requirement for schools to be able to tailor these policies for whatever works best for them, just having it being a requirement and having them have the chance to think about it and consider it more, which I'm sure they already are. I'm sure schools know this already. So,
Right. Yep. Absolutely. The one that I'll add on is, and thank you for making a reference to it, Maya. I totally forgot to remind people that they should be, if they're not already, they should be checking out our legislative preview series. It started Sunday and will run daily right through the first day of session. There'll be a story Monday morning. So make sure you're staying up to date on all those, and you'll be the local expert on the Iowa legislature in your office if you read all of those. And oh yes, also you'll know what state laws are being written that could impact you. The elections laws that could get a look at, and there's the recount procedure, which should be another bipartisan one. It started out as one last year, and then the wheels fell off of that bill, and we'll see if they're able to get that one going in, where they're kind of trying to make the recount procedure in the state more consistent, streamlined across all counties and precincts. But the one I'm going to be interested to see how it plays out in the debate is Secretary of State Paul Pate's proposal to allow his office to remove people's voter registration status if his office is unable to confirm their citizenship status. And we saw this play out in phase one in the election. If you've been following us here on the podcast or our stories, you know this, and that the Secretary of State's office created a list of about 2,000 people whose citizenship status they couldn't confirm. So they instructed poll workers to challenge the ballots of any of those people if they showed up to cast a ballot. There was concern raised about that because some of the information the state Secretary of State had was could have been outdated. And the Secretary of State's office countered by saying, well, we know that. That's why we're trying to get this fuller information from the federal immigration agencies who wouldn't share it. It's this whole thing. So anyways, now we're going to see that play out at the legislature now, a very similar debate over Iowa voter registration status. So I'll be interested to see where that one goes. When we talk to Republican leaders about that, the answer was kind of along the lines of, we generally agree with keeping the voter rolls clean and making our elections safe and secure. But we haven't seen that specific proposal, so we'll take a look at it when it comes our way. So we'll see how that unfolds. Any other ones to throw it back out to the group here any topics that we didn't cover that you're particularly interested about that we didn't get to? I think we covered most of the big ones anyways.
We didn't talk about the resolution that surely will be passed on the first day, warning Greenland to not resist our overtures to take over. So Panama Canal will be coming up. It's going to be a very patriotic session.
Useless.
We'll also have to watch out for the ceremonial changing of the photo. Biden's up there now.
That's right.
And they'll change it to Trump, and sometimes that causes some.
I've always wondered about that. Like, do all the offices of the government, do they get mailed like a little 8x11 photo that they put in? Like, how I wonder about the mechanics of that photo swap.
Yeah, that's a good. I assume that someone sends them an official, and that would be bigger than 8x11. I don't know what size that is, but it's fairly sizable because it's it's made to be seen from the galleries and everything. So yeah, that's a good question. I'll try and find that out. That would be my assumption though, that's like the White House sends those out to all 50 state capitals or something like that. Yeah. All right. Do we have any bodies of water that we need to rename in Iowa, Todd? Like we're like the Gulf of America? Do we?
Well, there's probably some out there that, based on their the water quality, they would be, Crap Creek, Effluent Creek, Nutrient, the Nutrient in Nabatna. I guess that would be.
There you go. Yeah. You're welcome, folks. I didn't even do that intentionally. That was my setup. You're welcome. All right. We're ready for the legislative session. So are you, especially after you check out that preview series. That'll do it for this episode of On Iowa Politics. If you're not already, please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or on YouTube, where you should also smash that like button. And you can also find the podcast each week, just right on the Gazette or Lee newspaper website of your choice. And now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you also subscribe to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. With the session coming up, no better time to get signed up for that one if you're not already. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Sioux Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. For Tom Barton, Maya Marchel Hoff, Jared McNett, Todd Dorman, and our producer Bailey Chehan, I'm Erin Murphy. Be well, everyone, and be good.